Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Kistler O'Brien podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Trumbauer with Kistler O'Brien Fire Protection. We thank you all for tuning in for another episode of our podcast series as we continue along here in 2021, and we have a very special episode for you today. We have two guests joining us, one from inside the KOB family and another very special individual with a lot of knowledge to talk to us today. From the KOB family, we have Steve Blatz from our sales department, and from Radio Solutions, their director of marketing and business development, Derek Case. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining me today.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
We appreciate it very much so. And today we have a very kind of a crossover episode, if you will. If you're a follower of Kistler O'Brien content online, you know we do a lot with our bi-directional amplifier system video content with Steve in a lot of those videos. And we want to talk about that today here on our podcast. So we're kind of converging both of those topics here and diving a little bit deeper. And we're going to bring our subject matter expert level, Derek, coming in as well to help us talk a little bit more about this. So guys, let's just get right into it. Obviously, the BDA system is something that we talk about a lot here at KOB. We have for months, dating back to the middle part of 2020, and it's going to be even a bigger focal point here in 2021. Steve, this is something that you're focusing on for KOB. Derek, this is something that you've seen across the country in different pockets. What is an ERCS, as they call it, a BDA, a lot of acronyms? What are they and where are they installed? Give us that background, please.
Sure. So basically what an emergency responder communication enhancement systems is, it's an in-building signal booster that's going to boost the radio signals from fireground operations into the building to fill in dead spots which used to exist before these systems were installed. It carries the signal down through the building to the emergency responders in the building, and then as they key their radios in the building, it carries it back up in a bi-directional manner. So it fills in dead spots and it ensures 100% reliable communications for first responders because lives depend upon it.
Certainly.
And that allows the first responders to talk amongst themselves within the building as well as outside of the building to the fire ground chief, as you will, and then also back to the command station.
Certainly, and that clear lines of communication are certainly key in emergency preparedness and in a fire emergency situation. Derek, what makes these systems so special overall, what they do, and then in particular, the solution that we offer in partnership with RSI and KOB?
So again, assuring first responders have 100% communication, as Steve mentioned, with each other inside the building and with folks in fireground operations and even police and EMS outside, it really gives first responders a better chance to meet the challenges of the emergency at hand without having to deal with lost communications during an emergency event. In fact, a 2017 survey of the International Association of Fire Chiefs said 56% of first responders experienced a communication failure in an emergency in the last 2 years, and that's reprehensible. And so what we've done in 2017, RSI worked with UL to form the UL 2524 standard. And what it does is it gives independent third-party validation that these systems do exactly what they're supposed to do the first time and every time, exactly as prescribed in the International Fire Code and the National Fire Protection Association, the life safety codes. And that's what's really important, that they have that third-party assurance that these systems work exactly as they're supposed to in the code. And that I think is the biggest benefit, what makes these systems special from Radio Solutions and Kistler O'Brien.
Mm-hmm. And to add to that, I mean, that's all of it. But Kistler O'Brien, we're our fire protection company. Yeah, and we're a smaller family type company. A lot of our employees are in the fire department or EMS. I know there's quite a few. And, as far as special, a lot of us really take it to heart what we do. And knowing that when we put a system like this into a building, that person, that employee, that family member is going to be walking into a safe building that they know they're going to walk out of again. And that hits home.
Very important point, Steve.
Those folks that run into the burning buildings and chase the bullets. That's what's important. We're protecting those who protect us.
Great points, guys. And Steve, we just heard Derek talk a lot about codes. He said International Fire Code, this code, that code. What about here in Pennsylvania? what is the status of the BDA systems here in the code? How long has that been? If you're an individual, an official local municipality individual here in the state of Pennsylvania, what does this BDA system mean to them right now?
It's getting a little foothold, and we like to see it get a bigger foothold. Currently PA is in the 2015 version of the IBC, and they don't really do a lot of changes to it except down Philly way. So BDA is in the code. It's required by that code. We have been in this code for 2, maybe almost 3 years. Now we have the I guess possibly uniqueness of we cover multiple states. Across the river in New Jersey, they adopted 2015 sooner than PA did, and they're much tighter on the code for BDA systems. So over there, you can't get a CO of a building until you walk down this path. Evaluate your new building. Does it need a BDA? Does it not need a BDA? If it does, you have to put one in, or you're not going to get a CO. You're not going to be able to put your people in the building. Here in PA, we're starting to see it. Some of the local municipalities right around us are putting it in their codes. They're putting it in their permit packages, and we've been seeing it. But we'd like to see it more. Like you said, there's a lot of buildings being built, and we're not seeing it in every specification package, and we need to. But especially as the state progresses, we'll probably be looking at the 2008 code within the next year or two. I'm sorry, 2018. And it's just going to be in there again and be a little bit more prevalent and have a few more requirements.
Gotcha, certainly. And Derek, you kind of have seen this nationwide. You've seen this in a lot of different markets and geographic areas. Steve talked about our unique perspective of being located in Pennsylvania, but servicing Pennsylvania and other local states in the tri-state area. What have you seen across the country, and what did they do to kind of have it get a stronger foothold and become more prevalent and more successful?
Yeah, great question, Tyler. So basically what we've done is we've done a lot of educational outreach with authorities having jurisdiction to really talk about the codes, to tell them about these systems, and to help them understand the benefits of that UL 2524 listing. So few manufacturers have that. We were the first in June of 2018. And again, what that gives them is that assurance that our systems are going to protect the local macro EMS frequencies, that we're not going to desensitize radios over time. There's not going to be, again, they have to have code required supervision and monitoring of these systems. And once the AHJs get comfortable with these systems and they realize that this really isn't a cost to the municipality, this has to be installed as part of the code, the International Building Codes, the International Fire Codes, they're very willing to draw up a specification, like the specification development tool, the AHJ spec tool that Kistler O'Brien can provide. And also, we've talked with specifying engineers, with architects and engineers, and telling them about these systems and that the AHJs are going to require them. So it's better to put an allowance in to design that into their building projects now at the design stage. So that way, when it is enforced later, if it's required, if there's insufficient coverage in the building, that it's a lot less expensive to add it when it's been provided for than to retrofit after the fact.
Certainly. And good point with, being able to have that knowledge ahead of time. But what is the current status of these systems right now? Are they required for all new buildings, particularly here in Pennsylvania? What about existing buildings? What do you do with those?
So the International Fire Code has section 510, and 510 really talks about what the system has to have. 95% floor area coverage, greater than 95 dBm, like Steve did on the building test very recently. So, it talks about the supervision and monitoring. So that's the new buildings, the IFC 510. IFC section 1103.2 talks about existing buildings as well. And next year, this year, the 2021 version of the International Existing Building Code, the IEBC, refers directly to the IFC. And I think when Pennsylvania updates to the new 2021 codes, they're actually going to require them for existing buildings, and that those systems must be UL 2524 listed. So it's gaining prevalence. We're seeing a lot of municipalities enforcing it for schools, for municipal buildings, for transportation hubs, for areas of mass congregation, the areas where the public is most at risk and where they can't afford to have communication dead spots in an emergency event.
Gotcha. And Steve, Derek mentioned testing buildings and seeing what your radio signal coverage is at the moment. We just did a video on that and testing the coverage and the signals. What can KOB do for those that are interested in seeing this testing done, seeing where their business currently stands? What can we do, and what's that process like?
We can provide that test. We have all the equipment. In our area, we've got a large conglomeration of either VHF style radios or digital. There are some UHF as well. We have all three radios to test all. And, if they reach out to us, ask us, let us know what their interests are. We do a little bit of upfront homework. We've got to find exactly what municipality they are. Do they have their own local radio, or are they on the county radio? We've got to get the frequencies. And once we have that, we can go to their building and do the same similar test that we showed on the video. Check all ends of the building on the outsides, typically also up on the roof. If we can get access to that, that's where the donor antenna would go. So we have to see what it looks like up there. And per the testing guidelines, a minimum of 20 grids in the building. And if it's a large building, that would be per floor, and critical areas, stair towers, exit ways, and anything that's really below ground. So we provide the test, we provide the report, and we can basically tell them exactly how their building functions in the radio spectrum and what is needed or potentially what may not be needed.
The other piece that I think is important to remember is, the Kistler O'Brien team are FCC GRO licensed, they're trained technicians, so they can go out before the first shovel of dirt has been actually dug for a project. They can take those readings north, south, east, and west where the building is going to be built. And based on our use of the IB Wave predictive RF modeling software, we can tell you if a BDA system is going to be required in that building before the ground is even broken. And that really helps the building owners to have assurance that they're going to have an on-time, code-compliant project that's not going to have any COO surprises and any unpleasant surprises at the end of when they're supposed to be opening the property.
Right, Derek, and that kind of perfectly transitions into what I want to talk about next, and that's really what the solution that RSI offers and how that stacks up to others in the class, as far as not only the trained techs that we have and the capabilities to go out there from day one of the planning stage to making sure that your financials and everything is going to be up to code and it's not a surprise cost down the line, but also being, one of the first out there, UL listed, and having, it says it over your shoulder, the all-inclusive BDA solution. What does this solution do that's better than the competitors, and what makes it the best in its class and the perfect solution for those that are looking for it?
Thanks, Tyler. Well, again, I think it's a perfect partnership between Radio Solutions and Kistler O'Brien. You've got the technicians who are life safety experts. You know fire codes. You know what's required of a life safety system, and the listed systems are super important. Hard to believe that these systems there was no listing for these prior to 2017. So starting with the UL 2524 listed system, FCC GRO licensed techs, GRO licensed designers here at our factory. Then going one step further, standardized test tools, standardized equipment that are used to deploy these systems, manufacturer's design of an IFC and NFPA compliant system every single time, and a turnkey system. So Kistler O'Brien doesn't have to shop over here for an antenna or a connector. We do everything. We know it's optimized as a system. And I think that's what makes the AHJs comfortable. It gives them the assurance that this is going to be a code compliant system, that it's going to protect their EMS macro radio network. And it also gives the design engineers, the property owners, property managers, that assurance that they're code compliant. There are no cost surprises down the line. they can know what the system's going to cost before the building's even built. And they know that there's safety for their building occupants and safety for first responders if there ever is an emergency event in that building. And I think that's what life safety is all about. Like Steve said, the Kistler O'Brien family takes this very seriously. These are our brothers and sisters and relatives. So we take this very, very seriously. And I think the authorities having jurisdiction around the country have recognized that, and they appreciate the level of quality that we and our partners like Kistler O'Brien are able to bring to these projects as they're deployed.
I'd like to add a little something on that, and I'm going to tiptoe down a road, and I'd like you to chime in as you can. The UL listing, like you said, and the alternative of shopping over here for that. I'm going to take this antenna and I'm going to take this amplifier, and I think that booster is going to work, and a couple of the splitters in that basket, that's going to work, and I'm going to put all this together and I'm going to make a BDA. How is it, and I'm going to focus that in like a question. Can we elaborate on why that's not the best idea? Because in our market here, I've come up against this a few times where that's what my competitors are doing. And, I'm trying to focus more with my customers and the AHJs about, well, that UL listing and that monitoring and that supervision. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Absolutely. For the first 15 years of Radio Solutions history, Admir Sirkovich, our CEO, CTO, and founder, he was a communication systems integrator. And he suffered having to field engineer these systems from parts from, 10 different suppliers. And basically in 2015 decided to stop the insanity and really to begin as a full ERCES manufacturer of turnkey systems. He funded the outline investigation with UL for the 2524 standard. We're continuing to update our systems to the second edition, full second edition listing and compatibility. And that's really what's important to say, non-compliant systems put first responders at risk. And it's important for AHJs, it's important for building owners to look for that UL label. It's in the code, the 2021 version of the code, NFPA, IFC, IBC, all the life safety codes say these must be listed. And in the past 3 years, only a few have been listed, one by UL and a few by other OSHA recognized NERDLs. But that's really what's important, is to say, we need to raise the bar. We're raising the bar on quality because there are no compromises in life safety. And I think the more educational opportunities we have to talk about the risks that non-compliant systems pose, where there is no remote enunciator, where there's no battery backup, these kind of things put first responders at risk, and it's unacceptable in the life safety industry.
And those pieced systems, that unit behind you, that's what we put in the building. That is one system. That is what gets supervised by the fire alarm system. Everything out from there is either a splitter, a coupler, or an antenna, and it's part of that, but that's the control unit. These other systems have a tendency to be all over the place. They've got an amplifier over there. They've got an amplifier on that floor. They've got an amplifier 3 floors up. Every one of those needs to be monitored. And that's what I'm seeing is they're not doing that. They don't have their individual power supplies. They don't have individual battery backup for every powered control unit, whether it be an amplifier blade or a splitter. An amplifier. And then so inherently, they're not a listed system. They can't be. And they're not completely supervised. A piece out there can fail, and we're not going to know it, that amplifier on floors 2 and 3 or the east wing is not functioning.
Correct. And a non-monitored system, again, we talk about protecting the EMS macro, the radio network. You could have a situation where a bad storm comes through and you knock that donor antenna, the Yagi antenna on the roof, and it faces down now into the building. And what that's going to do is it's going to cause a feedback loop. We call it oscillation. It's like when anyone who's sung karaoke, you walk too close to the speaker stack with a mic, you get that horrible reverb. Well, imagine that on the frequency of the EMS frequency for the first responders. That's what these systems can do. And there have been instances in your state where these systems have actually malfunctioned. And because of that lack of supervision and monitoring, it went undetected for a week. And they had to fly around in a helicopter with a Yagi antenna to find the building and shut it down. So again, we're talking life safety. We're talking about compliance, code compliance. And that is the system that we've designed, that Kistler O'Brien brings to reality in your market. And there are no compromises.
Great conversation right there, guys, back and forth about these systems and how they compare to others that may be trying to go a different route, and really where the shortcomings of that idea is at. And I appreciate all of that. And Steve, if we can kind of jump off of that a bit, and you talked about what you're seeing when you're talking to customers and what else is in your local marketplace where you're trying to get this BDA solution out more. If you're someone that's listening to this podcast right now in this conversation, and they are hearing all of these details, hearing the comparing and contrasting of our solution in partnership with RSI and what the competitors are suggesting or putting out there as a solution, what would be their first step in the right direction, we think, to come with us and RSI and KOB? What would their first steps to be to get this, or at least get a test, of their building currently, of their radio signal? What would be their next steps to get them to where they need to be?
Give us a call. And it is that simple. Call Kistler O'Brien and we will walk you through all the steps from there. And like you said, in phrasing your question, we need to do a building test. We'll just analyze the building. We need, and as far as what the customer might need to provide, drawing floor plans, we will need that of the building somehow. And they could just be blank, architecturals, anything old, paper, electronic format like a PDF or a CAD file, and an address. And that's all we need to get started.
Certainly. And that's one way looking forward. And Derek, I want to pose this question to you, maybe not as much in this solution with the BDA, but tying this in with the entire fire and life safety industry, as someone that is in the nitty gritty with all of this and forward thinking as far as codes and technology goes. During this podcast series, dating all the way back to a few months into 2020, we have learned a lot about the technology and the advances of that in fire systems and life safety overall. How do you see this system and others growing and changing and evolving with technology, and like what could come down the line to try to make everybody safer with these systems and other ones in place?
A great question, Tyler. ERCES have been around for quite a long while, and it really, RSI raised the bar in 2017, working with UL to develop that 2524 standard. Now there's a second edition, UL 2524. So as we update and completely turn our portfolio to be UL 2524 second edition compatible, we're bringing that additional layer of safety. NFPA 1221, which replaced the NFPA 72 that's followed in Pennsylvania, it's now moving to NFPA 1225. And every code cycle, it gets more specific in terms of annual testing, code required maintenance contracts. And, you're going to have a 5-year recertification of every single building, and giving that information to the AHJs to help empower them that these are the safest systems and the safest buildings for their first responders to be in. Things like multiple enunciation points. Think about what that does to a first responder. You're walking in and you look at the lobby. These remote enunciators are normally required by the AHJ to be in the fire command room. Having a real quick visual indication at the front door, the back door, and at the fire command room, it gives that first responder assurance to say, I'm going to face a lot of challenges in this emergency event, but lost communication isn't going to be one of them. And I think that's really what we're talking about here, is to say, make the building occupants and the first responders feel safer with this technology, and then the sky's the limit.
Certainly, and clear communication is not a luxury, it's a necessity when it comes to a fire emergency situation for first responders. And our communication here, gentlemen, has been spot on. I appreciate both of your times today to talk about this. Some great insight, Derek and Steve, and, just a great discussion about these systems and, what they can do. And hopefully this spurs, some more interest about them here in our local market and, of course, across the country as well. So Steve, Derek, thank you both so much for your time today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And thank you to our viewers. Once again, thank you to Steve Blatz with our sales department and Derek Case, the director of marketing and business development for Radio Solutions, Inc. If you want any more information about the BDA systems, we have it on our website, KOBfire.com. And of course, you can reach out to Steve for more information and to go potentially get a test done of your building and to ask any questions. Steve is our expert here at Kistler O'Brien. That'll do it for us here today for this episode. We thank you all for tuning in. If you've missed any of our previous KOB podcast episodes, be sure to check them out on our YouTube channel, KOB, Kistler O'Brien, Fire Protection on YouTube. Until next time, I'm Tyler Trumbauer with Kistler O'Brien Fire Protection. We'll talk to you then.